Hello, namaste and welcome you all. Up to our last lecture, we have discussed variable cost, fixed cost, contribution, break-even point or break-even stage. When that break-even stage comes, we discuss. Then in our last lecture, we have discussed in detail the BEP analysis or CVP analysis. In our last lecture, we have understood how to construct a break-even point or how to make or how to draw a break-even chart. We have discussed in the last lecture. With the help of BEP chart, we have discussed meaning of BEP point, angle of incidence, margin of safety, BEP sales, and many more things we discussed in the last lecture. Now today we are going to understand various components of total sales, BEP sales and margin of safety sales. Margin of safety sales. So total sales. Total sales is equal to BEP sales plus margin of safety sales. If we break total sales into two parts, then first part will be BEP sale as we discussed in the last lecture, and remaining part will be called as margin of safety sales. In short, if we deduct BEP sales from total sales, then whatever part will remain, that part will be known as margin of safety. So you can see, if we break total sales into two parts, then first part will be called as break-even sales and remaining part will be called as margin of safety or margin of safety sales. Total sales less BEP sales is equal to margin of safety sales. Total sales less margin of safety sales is equal to BEP sales, because total sales is having break in two parts. So first of all, we are going to understand BEP sales as we have discussed in the last lecture. BEP sale is that point of sales when our total costs and total sales are exactly equal. When that amount of sale or that point of sale when our total cost and total sales are exactly same, that sale known as BEP sale, because at that stage our total cost and total sales are exactly equal, means there is no profit or no loss. Suppose our sales is 10 and cost is also 10. Is there any profit? No. Is there any loss? No. So that level is called as no profit no loss stage or BEP stage. That's why that point of sale known as BEP sales. BEP sales, that point of sales when total cost and total sales are exactly equal. That is known as BEP sales. And what is mean by margin of safety sales? Margin of safety sales means total sales less BEP sale. Then the remaining part of sales will be called as margin of safety sales. In other words, we can say excess of total sales over BEP sales is called margin of safety. Excess of total sales over BEP sales is equal to or is called margin of safety sales. In other words, total sales less BEP sales. Total sales less BEP sales. What is remain? Margin of safety. Total sales less BEP sale. The remaining part is called as margin of safety sales. Total sales less BEP sales is equal to margin of safety sales. Now we are going to understand the contents of BEP sales and the contents of margin of safety sales. As we have discussed in the last lecture, same thing we are discussing today with in formula form. We have discussed in last lecture in graphical form. Okay. So total sales less margin of safety sales is equal to BEP. Total sales less BEP sales is equal to margin of safety. Why? Because total sales is categorized into two parts. So total sales less BEP is equal to margin of safety. total sales less margin of safety sales is equal to BEP sales. Okay, because BEP sales plus margin of safety sales is equal to total sales. Now come to contents of BEP sales. What are the contents of BEP sales? BEP sales include two contents or has two contents, which these are: first, total fixed cost, and second, variable cost of BEP units, not total variable cost. Variable cost of only BEP units, not of total units, total sales unit. Variable cost of only BEP units. What are contents of BEP sales? Total fixed cost and variable cost of BEP units only, not of total units. Variable cost of BEP units. In other words, we can say BEP sales is equal to total fixed cost plus variable cost of BEP unit. Variable cost of BEP units means BEP sales has two contents. Which are these? Total fixed cost and second, variable cost of BEP units only, not of total sales unit. Variable cost of BEP units. So if we make addition of total fixed cost and variable cost of BEP units, we get the amount of BEP sales. Or in other words, BEP sales is equal to total fixed cost plus variable cost of BEP units. We can say BEP sales has two contents: total fixed cost and variable cost of BEP units, not total sales units. Total fixed cost and variable cost of BEP units are the components of or are the contents of BEP sales. Now, what are the contents of margin of safety sales? Contents of margin of safety sales. It includes two contents: total profit first and second, variable cost of margin of safety units. Margin of safety units. You can see components of BEP unit. First, fixed cost. Component of margin of safety or contents of margin of safety. First, total profit. That is difference. First contained fixed cost. Here first contained total profit. Here total fixed cost. Here total profit. Then variable cost of BEP units. Here variable cost of margin of safety units. So contents of BEP sales: total fixed cost and variable cost of BEP units. And what are the contents of margin of safety? Total profit and variable cost of margin of safety units. In other words, we can say margin of safety is equal to total profit plus variable cost of margin of safety units. So what we have discussed? We have discussed what is meant by total sales. Total sales, BEP sales plus margin of safety sales is equal to total sales. What is meant by BEP sales? The point of sales when our total sales and total costs are exactly equal. That sale known as BEP sales. Then margin of safety sales. Excess of total sales over BEP sales is called as margin of safety sales. Or we can say total sales less BEP sales is equal to margin of safety sales. Or total sales less BEP sales, the remaining part will be called as margin of safety sales. And what are the contents of BEP sales? Contents of BEP sales: total fixed cost and second, variable cost of BEP units. Contents of BEP sales: total fixed cost and variable cost of BEP units. So BEP sales is equal to total fixed cost plus variable cost of BEP units. And what are the contents of margin of safety? sales, margin of safety sales also has two contents. First, total profit, and second, variable cost of margin of safety units. Contents of margin of safety sale: first, total profit; second, variable cost of which units? Margin of safety units. So margin of safety sales is equal to total profit plus variable cost of margin of safety units. So I hope all of you understood it. Thank you.